Let's talk about Nutter Butter.
All right, let's talk about Quiznos wraps.
Rats.
What a brand, what a brand, what a brand, what a mighty good brand. Say it again now. What a brand, what a brand, what a brand, what a mighty good brand.
Nutter Butter is, for those who don't know, is a legacy cookie brand. It's like 50 years old, started in the 70s. It's owned by Mondelez, and it's very much a grocery store brand. It, however, has become a topic of conversation because they have this chaotic TikTok strategy that is resulting in millions of views and quite the buzz on social media. So I wanted to break it down. I wanted to show you the Nutter Butter TikTok so that we can decide, is this a strategy to learn from, or is this a dumpster fire that you should avoid as a brand? What is your initial thoughts? Where I'm struggling with the Nutter Butter issue is there's a lot of comments of people saying, like, they're getting millions of views. I'm following them. There's getting thousands of comments. It's therefore working. You know, we're talking about Nutter Butter and it's working. And I guess the question is this a case of all PR is good PR, even bad PR? Or is this a case where when you're being laughed at and people are like, what are you doing? You're literally shitting on your brand. Does that also result in an increase in sales? And what matters the most? Is it sales? Like,
the interesting thing to Nutter Butter, it's hard to answer the question if I don't see the strategic guidance document behind it.
there is no strategy.
Well, there may be. I'd just like to see it. Is it like, hey, look, we're a peanut butter cookie that tastes amazing, but people don't talk about it. So let's do something to make people at least talk about it. And so therefore we're going to engage in a campaign on TikTok that's different than any other cookie by just kind of making fun of ourselves. So at least people are talking about a cookie, because the only other cookie people talk about is either Oreo or Chips Ahoy or something. So maybe they're trying to get themselves into the conversation. Like when I look at their socials, like it's actually a tasty cookie, but it's not making me want to buy the cookie.
But that's like my point is they're not laughing at themselves. Like that it's this contrived strategy where there's an Aiden, there's a Nadia, like there's shrimp on cookie. Like this is a very unique style. I think it's the people who did Quiznos Rats.
It looks a lot like Quiznos Rats.
It's literally giving Quiznos Rats. And
if anybody knows, post in here and see if the same people in Quiznos Rats were
I think
doing
it's
it,
got to be like the
they're
style
putting a
is
face on
too
food
close.
That's creepy.
Yeah, it's too close.
Right?
But I think it just poses an interesting question, because is it worth moving forward with this strategy to truly get views based on chaos and an absolute like it's complete opposite of a branding strategy of like connecting with the brand's values and is that worth it in the long run for short-term sales? And does it even result in sales? Like obviously there's probably some increase in sales because some people just like when brands do extreme acts.
Yeah.
And they probably are ordering them because a lot of Gen Zs have never heard of them.
They've got some money to invest in marketing, so but we didn't really see a huge growth in sales. But like when I see a shrimp on a peanut butter cookie, it actually makes a gag reflex, like a peanut butter cookie. So I don't know why they're doing that when they have one of the best tasting peanut butter cookies in America.
I don't get it.
Like, why would you put a shrimp on it?
I just don't get it at all. And there's like, I was reading a bunch of articles on it, and like, there's apparently a trend where like Gen Zs are liking this like self-deprecating chaos on socials because it's kind of drug inducing and you can just stare at it and like there's so much going on.
Yeah,
but like,
yeah.
so it's kind of pleasurable for the mind.
That's a question. That's an interesting thing that people don't talk about is what time of day are you getting your views?
Well, that's
right?
like what a bunch
Because
of the
this is
comments were saying. It's
like bake heads.
this is literally the moment the gummy hit. It was like when a bunch of the comments were
people
saying.
are watching it like 10 times.
And that's where you could get sales. But I just feel like you could lean on that strategy in a more strategic way. Like you could talk about like almost Nutter Butter hacks, like putting fluffer in between and chocolate chips and sprinkles and then saying like this is the perfect high hack. Like there's a way to do it without it being completely chaotic and not making sense.
It's a very guerrilla strategy. Like they actually put words on that make no sense, so that your eyes stay there and you're trying to read it to see, am I reading this wrong? Like this one thing, what could you, if you don't share, so they could say no couch, and they have a peanut butter cookie couch there. And I just read it like 4 times saying, what the, but you know, so what they're doing is using techniques to keep your eyeballs on their socials to get the metrics that look like success. Your question is it translating into sales? Is it building the brand over a long term? Or like the Quiznos rats, is it getting attention but killing the brand?
Well, I would argue that it's getting attention, but it's killing the brand.
Yeah.
Because to me, there's more people. Like, if you're going to take a guerrilla strategy, there's a way to do it where you could bring in way more people than it being so niche and so extreme that it turns off more people than it attracts. So I was reading an Adweek article tracking the sales on Amazon, because that's like more public knowledge. And they said there's been 190% increase over the year. They've started doing this strategy over like 12 months. And they're like, it's been 190% increase, but they're like, but you can't also contribute that to socials alone, because they also decreased the price below category average. So they've also done a major price drop so that Nutter Butter is also like the cheapest cookie that you can buy, or a brand name cookie that you can buy on Amazon. So for 190% increase for what I think ruins the brand and is harder to get back from when it's been around since 1969 for a short-term strategy, like, people aren't going to perpetually talk about this strategy for the next 3 or 4 years. Like, there needs to be a plan to get back to something that is sustainable.
I think we're touching on something interesting. I think like a kind of a dynamic creative brand came in and said, we're going to disrupt the whole industry with a series of ads and campaigns that get people attention, but I don't think they have a long-term brand strategy on top of it, because Nutter Butter are actually great peanut butter cookies. Like, I would have a message that says the best peanut butter cookie. Like, I just don't think that they're pushing what is likable about their product to consumers. I would have the Dos Equis guy goes, I don't often eat peanut butter cookies, but when I do, I eat Nutter Butter. Or just do something that shows them to be the best cookie when you want a peanut butter cookie. But
well, you also brought up an interesting point. You know, Oreo and Chips Ahoy are very difficult brands to say as competitors in category, because they've invested so much in licensing, right? So what makes Oreo so prolific is that they license what their cookie is to almost every food industry. So that's why you can get like Oreo products at restaurants,
so
right?
Let's segue, if I can. It's almost kind of like our Irish pub story, where Guinness did very well because they were absolutely associated with Irish pubs, which are all around the world. What Oreo's brilliance is associating with milk, right? Like, that was a brilliant thing.
Yeah,
about
it was
Oreo,
brilliant.
right? So people were always just dipping Oreos in milk, because that's what they were supposed to do. Like, but they've associated a Nutter Butter cookie with shrimp, which is freaking disgusting, and it doesn't make me want to eat them.
I can't say enough that I think this is a horrible strategy, and the reason why it makes me really pissed off is for how many good strategies we put in front of big companies that get bike shedded or like just a complete no, and then something like this gets approved across the table. Because you can be guerrilla, you can be dynamic, you can be viral, but it's not having a boring TikTok like to this. Like, there's a spectrum in between, and I think leaning into more like what Taco Bell does, like accepting that there's like, you know, there's like a stoner or a chronic element, or even like old people love the cookie. Like, it'd be hilarious to do a whole TikTok series of like old people like swearing or at workout classes or coming back to sneak in their Nutter Butters, or like coming, like there could be a funny way to do a guerrilla strategy that isn't so weird.
But what they've done here is there is a technical person behind this agency that has figured out how to make the brain stay on things. Like, almost every post has something that doesn't make sense that looks like it should make sense.
I wonder if it's like an editor from South Park, because it also gives kind of a bit of like a South Park feel, especially the way that they cut.
But they're just doing things that deliberately make you say, this doesn't look like it's right. And then you're like, what does it mean? And now you're staying on it. They're getting a metric. I don't think it's making people want to eat the cookie.
I think that's what people, I think that you're exactly on. Like, it's in that way, it's obvious that they're getting 10 million views on videos that make no sense, because you're like, one, is it like, is this real?
Did they make a
Like,
mistake
is this
here?
like, is this, are they hacked? Like,
Yeah.
are they seriously posting these videos? Especially to the way the algorithm works is you don't get every video. So the ones with the high view counts are like stressing people out so much that like it's going on more feeds, and
It's
they're
pure
like, Nutter
science because
Butter.
people are watching it a second time to say, "What am I missing something here? Like, what am
Yeah.
I missing?" And that's resulting in the multiple views. That's a hack. It doesn't necessarily support your brain, and it's temporary.
It's also hard to replicate. And I think that's an important point is when brands do these breakout moments, regardless of what we agree with, you know, from a view count perspective, it's working. It's very hard for a brand to replicate that. But what I do find interesting to analyze based on the Nutter Butter, and I was reading through the comments and it was like Sour Patch Kids commented and they're like, "Are you good, bro?" Like, they're like, there's a bunch of other brands that are playing into the moment that are commenting as the brand, like being like, "Hey, we see you in the shelves. Like, you're not seeming too good. Like, are you doing okay?" Like, it's in that way, it's kind of becoming a funny social moment. But when I was analyzing the brands like Sour Patch Kids from a role on social media, a lot of these CPG brands at the highest level are actually really using TikTok well. And Sour Patch Kids is a great example of their content isn't focused on selling. It's creating moments around their product that are interesting, educational, or entertaining. And Sour Patch Kids, they did this like whole TikTok on like Sour Patch adults. So start sour, end sad. And it's like the
I
Sour
love
Patch
that.
Kids like in a suit. Like
Yeah.
that's very creative. That's really interesting. And it's doing very well. Like Sour Patch Kids has like 2 million followers and their content is great. And you would never want to follow Sour Patch on socials because it's like a checkout brand. You know, you buy it at a gas station or you buy it when you're leaving the grocery store. So there's a way, like, it's really interesting for us to analyze the role that these food companies are playing online and how they're nailing it and where there's space to have a personality where it doesn't have to be on the extreme end of weird.